They sit in the most powerful seat in the world, hold the nuclear codes in their hands, and steer the global economy. So how much do U.S. presidents actually earn in return for this enormous responsibility? You'll be surprised, but in over 230 years of history, their salaries have only changed 5 times. Here are the presidential salaries from George Washington to the present day, from the lowest to the highest. At the top of our list is the lowest salary group, covering a total of 18 presidents. From George Washington to Abraham Lincoln, all presidents earned $25,000 per year, or approximately $2,083 per month. Does that sound low? Think again. The $25,000 of 1789 is equivalent to $900,000 per year in today's purchasing power. So the first presidents were actually twice as wealthy as today's presidents. Our story begins in 1789. For nearly a century, the salary of American presidents was constitutionally fixed at $25,000 per year. This was an enormous sum of money at the time. George Washington, 1789 to 1797, founding father and first president. He initially refused to accept a salary, but accepted it to set a precedent. John Adams, 1797 to 1801, passionate advocate of the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson, 1801 to 1809, principal author of the Declaration of Independence and the man who purchased Louisiana. James Madison, 1809 to 1817, father of the Constitution and leader of the War of 1812. James Monroe, 1817 to 1825, shaped American foreign policy with the Monroe Doctrine. John Quincy Adams, 1825 to 1829, son of a former president, diplomat, and intellectual. Andrew Jackson, 1829 to 1837, known as the Man of the People, a controversial and powerful leader. Martin Van Buren, 1837 to 1841, battled one of the first major economic crises, the Panic of 1837. William Henry Harrison, 1841, the shortest-serving president, dying on his 31st day in office. John Tyler, 1841 to 1845, the first vice president to assume the presidency upon the death of the president. James K. Polk, 1845 to 1849, expanded U.S. borders to the Pacific through the Mexican War. Zachary Taylor, 1849 to 1850, the second president to die in office, a former war hero. Millard Fillmore, 1850 to 1853, signed the Compromise of 1850 amid the shadow of slavery debates. Franklin Pierce, 1853 to 1857, failed to ease tensions before the Civil War. James Buchanan, 1857 to 1861, the president who failed to prevent the outbreak of the Civil War and is generally considered unsuccessful. Abraham Lincoln, 1861 to 1865, won the Civil War, abolished slavery, and became the first president to be assassinated. Andrew Johnson, 1865 to 1869, took office after Lincoln's assassination, the first president to face impeachment. Ulysses S. Grant, 1869 to 1877, Civil War hero general, He received this salary during his first term.
In 1873, during the presidency of Ulysses S. Grant, salaries were doubled for the first time, rising to $50,000 per year, $4,166 per month. However, the public was so outraged by this that they dubbed it the Salary Grab Act. A total of 9 presidents, including Theodore Roosevelt, served at this salary. Rutherford B. Hayes, 1877 to 1881, came to power through a contested election and ended the post-Civil War Reconstruction era. James A. Garfield, 1881, was assassinated just months after taking office. Chester A. Arthur, 1881 to 1885, succeeded Garfield and laid the foundations for the modern U.S. Navy. Grover Cleveland, 1885 to 1889, first term. Known for his honesty, he was the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. Benjamin Harrison, 1889 to 1893, signed the Sherman Antitrust Act to combat monopolies. Grover Cleveland, 1893 to 1897, second term, returned to the White House but faced a severe economic crisis. William McKinley, 1897 to 1901, led the Spanish-American War, was assassinated early in his second term. Theodore Roosevelt, 1901 to 1909, the youngest president, established national parks, implemented Big Stick diplomacy. When the calendars showed 1909, salaries rose to $75,000, monthly $6,250. This salary range, which lasted from William Howard Taft to Harry Truman's first term, saw some of the most challenging periods in history, including World War I, the Great Depression, and World War II. William Howard Taft, 1909 to 1913. The only person to serve as both President and later Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Woodrow Wilson, 1913 to 1921, led the country during World War I and spearheaded the creation of the League of Nations. Warren G. Harding, 1921 to 1923, came to office promising a return to normalcy, but his administration was marred by scandals. He died in office. Calvin Coolidge, 1923 to 1929, the silent president of the Roaring Twenties, a period of economic prosperity. Herbert Hoover, 1929 to 1933. The Great Depression broke out shortly after he took office. Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR, 1933 to 1945, the only president elected 4 times. He left his mark on the Great Depression with the New Deal and on World War II with his leadership.
Harry S. Truman, 1945 to 1953, assumed office after FDR's death, authorized the atomic bomb, and initiated the Cold War. Dwight D. Eisenhower, 1953 to 1961, war hero general, established the modern highway system, ended the Korean War. John F. Kennedy, JFK, 1961 to 1963, managed the Cuban Missile Crisis, set the goal of going to the moon, and was tragically assassinated. Lyndon B. Johnson, LBJ, 1963 to 1969, took over after Kennedy, signed the Civil Rights Act, but became bogged down in the Vietnam War quagmire.
In 1969, salaries reached $200,000, monthly $16,666, and did not increase by a single penny for 32 years. 6 presidents, from Richard Nixon to Bill Clinton, received the same salary regardless of inflation. Richard Nixon, 1969 to 1974. Initiated relations with China, but became the only president to resign due to the Watergate scandal. Gerald Ford, 1974 to 1977. The only person to become president without being elected. He pardoned Nixon and tried to heal the nation. Jimmy Carter, 1977 to 1981. He brokered the Camp David peace accords, but struggled with the Iran hostage crisis and inflation. Ronald Reagan, 1981 to 1989. He launched the conservative revolution, implemented Reaganomics economic policies, and accelerated the end of the Cold War. George H.W. Bush, 1989 to 1993. Managed the bloodless end of the Cold War and the Gulf War. Clinton, 1993 to 2001. Presided over one of America's longest periods of economic growth in the post-Cold War era. And today's salary level. The period that began in 2001 with George W. Bush, which is $400,000 per year, or approximately $33,333 per month. Current presidents, including the 47th President, Donald Trump, who is currently in office, receive this salary. Additionally, an annual expense allowance of $50,000 is added to this salary. George W. Bush, 2001 to 2009. Initiated the War on Terror following the September 11th attacks and led the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Barack Obama, 2009 to 2017. First African American president. Battled the Great Recession and passed health care reform, Obamacare. Donald Trump, 2017 to 2021. A businessman from outside politics. He pursued a America First policy, leading to a polarizing period. Joe Biden. After serving as a senator and vice president for many years, he became the oldest president to take office. Ladies and gentlemen, this journey, which began in 1789 with $25,000, has now reached $400,000. Although the figures have changed, the weight of the burden on the shoulders of these 46 men and the mark they left on history are too great to be measured in monetary terms. Thank you for listening. So, do you think this salary is sufficient for this responsibility? Let's end with an interesting fact. Billionaires or very wealthy presidents, such as Donald Trump, JFK, and Herbert Hoover, refused to accept this salary and donated it to charities. How much do you think the salary for running a country should be? Let's meet in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more historical content like this.